I am Harrison, 32 years old. 2 years ago, while I was sitting in a freezing, grease-stained auto repair garage staring at a dusty computer screen, I heard my own mother negotiate my death. While I was narrowly avoiding a catastrophic, fatal highway crash that would have left my body unrecognizable, my mother and my brother were standing in a shady mechanic's shop, looking at my deliberately broken car. I heard her voice crystal clear through the hidden dashcam audio. She said, "Quiet. If the car breaks while he's driving, it's an accident. He has a huge life insurance policy. The trust goes to us. Let him drive it." They were going to let me die on the interstate for a payout. They calculated the return on investment of my life and decided my death was worth more than a repair bill. But there was one thing they didn't know. They didn't know about the hidden parking mode dashcam that recorded every single whisper of their murderous conspiracy, and they certainly didn't know about the secret moral turpitude clause in my father's inheritance documents. And right now, they are sitting in prison cells, completely stripped of their wealth, begging for a forgiveness I will never, ever give. Before I tell you exactly how I dismantled their lives piece by piece, please hit the like button if you believe in true justice. And do not forget to let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Now, let's go back to where this absolute nightmare really started. Most people think that managing a massive inheritance is a blessing. They picture endless vacations, country club memberships, popping champagne on a Tuesday afternoon, and absolute financial freedom. But let me tell you the harsh reality. When your late father leaves you as the sole trustee of an estate worth nearly $3 million because he knew your mother and brother would blow it all in a single year, it does not feel like a blessing. It feels like a second full-time job. It feels like carrying a boulder on your back. And your only co-workers in this miserable job are people who share your blood but secretly hate your guts. I work as a senior financial analyst at a prestigious wealth management firm in downtown Columbus. I live a quiet, highly disciplined life. I drive a reliable 5-year-old sedan that I bought used. I max out my 401k every single year. I clip coupons, and I do not buy things I do not absolutely need. I worked relentlessly for every single promotion I have ever received. If you saw me at Walmart picking up groceries on a Sunday morning, wearing a plain gray t-shirt and faded jeans, you would never in a million years guess that my signature is the only thing standing between my family and a massive fortune. My father passed away 4 years ago from a fast-moving pancreatic cancer. He was a brilliant, hard-working man who built a lucrative real estate portfolio from absolutely nothing. He started with one broken-down duplex and turned it into an empire of commercial and residential properties. But he made one fatal mistake in his life. He married Sylvia. My mother is a woman who measures love in dollar signs, designer labels, and social status. She views people entirely as assets or liabilities. And she raised my younger brother, Preston, to be an exact carbon copy of her. Preston is 26 years old, chronically unemployed, and thoroughly convinced that the world owes him a lavish living just for existing. When Preston was 18, my father set up a generous college fund for him. Preston drained the entire account in 3 semesters, dropping out of a private university to trade crypto, which really meant sitting on the couch smoking weed and demanding more money. I still remember the last conversation I had with my dad. The sterile, chemical smell of the hospital room still haunts me to this day. The rhythmic, agonizing beep of his heart monitor felt like a countdown clock to the end of my family. His skin was gray, his body frail, but he gripped my hand with a desperate strength. His eyes were wide and filled with a profound sorrow. He told me I was the only one with a head on my shoulders. He said he was leaving me in charge of the trust. Not Sylvia, not Preston, me. He made me promise to take care of them, but to never let them ruin me. He told me to be the brake pedal for our family, because they had lived with their foot slammed on the gas their entire lives. He knew that if Sylvia gained control of the real estate portfolio, she would sell everything at a discount just to fund a decade of luxury, leaving them destitute when the well ran dry. I promised him. I looked my dying father in the eye and swore I would protect his legacy. I did not realize I was signing a contract for years of psychological warfare. The day of the funeral was a spectacle. Sylvia wore a black designer dress that cost more than my car, performing her role as the tragic, grieving widow for the cameras and the country club friends. Preston was busy texting on his phone during the eulogy. I stood in the back, quietly mourning the only real parent I ever had. But the real chaos started 2 days later at the lawyer's office. When Mr. Caldwell, the estate attorney, read the will and revealed that I was the sole trustee, Sylvia completely lost her mind. She threatened a massive lawsuit right there in the boardroom. She screamed that I had manipulated a dying man. But the paperwork was ironclad. My father had made sure of it. My current nightmare started on a regular Tuesday evening, 2 years into my tenure as the family bank. I was sitting at my kitchen table, completely exhausted after a long day of analyzing corporate portfolios, doing my dreaded monthly ritual. I was going through the thick stack of invoices my mother had forwarded to me. The trust was legally set up to cover their housing, healthcare, maintenance, and a reasonable living allowance. But Sylvia's definition of reasonable was entirely divorced from reality. I picked up the first receipt from the pile. A luxury spa in the city center. $400 for a facial, another $300 for a seaweed body wrap, and $200 for exotic skin creams. I rubbed my eyes, feeling the familiar, throbbing tension headache creeping up my neck. I moved to the next bill. It was a credit card statement from Preston. He had put a massive deposit down on a vacation rental in Miami for him and his friends. No job, no prospects, no income, but he needed a beachfront condo to maintain his image. And then I saw the big one, an auto loan statement. Sylvia had leased a brand new Porsche Panamera. The monthly payment was astronomical. She expected the trust to just absorb it like it was a standard utility bill. She didn't even ask me. She just signed the lease and sent the invoice to my address. I grabbed my red pen. I circled the spa charges. Rejected. I crossed out the Miami deposit. Rejected. And I put a massive, aggressive red X across the Porsche payment. The trust rules were explicitly clear. The funds were for basic maintenance and well-being, not for funding a billionaire lifestyle on a millionaire's budget. I knew the storm that was coming. I knew that tomorrow my phone would ring, and Sylvia would play the victim. She would cry, accuse me of hoarding my father's money, and tell me I was a cruel, heartless son. But I had to hold the line. There is a massive difference between keeping someone safe and keeping them spoiled. I poured myself a glass of cheap tap water, staring at my father's picture pinned to the fridge. He was smiling, standing in front of one of his first apartment buildings. I whispered to him, telling him I was trying to hold the gates. I was trying to be the man he needed me to be. I did not know that the enemy was not just at the gates. They were already inside the walls, quietly plotting my total destruction. I thought the worst was over after the legal battles following the funeral. I was so incredibly wrong. The next morning, right on cue, my phone lit up with Sylvia's name blazing across the screen. I was sitting at my desk at the firm, reviewing a massive corporate merger file. I let the phone ring 3 times, taking a deep breath and steeling my nerves before pressing the answer button. "Harrison," she said. Her voice was dripping with that manufactured, breathy disappointment she always used when she did not immediately get her way. "I just saw the automated email from the trust account portal. You rejected my invoices. Again." "Mom, the trust does not cover luxury seaweed wraps or Preston's Miami party vacations. And it certainly does not cover a Porsche Panamera. We have talked about this extensively. You have your monthly allowance. If you want those extravagant things, you pay for them from your own personal funds." "I am a grieving widow," she snapped, dropping the fragile, wounded bird act instantly. Her voice turned sharp, loud, and venomous. "Your father wanted me to be comfortable. He wanted me to maintain my standing in the community. Do you have any idea how deeply humiliating it is to explain to my friends at the club why my own son is financially starving me out? You live in a fully paid-off, 6-bedroom house in a gated community, Mom. You are not starving. I am following the strict legal guidelines of the trust document. If I pay for a Porsche, I am violating my fiduciary duty. She scoffed loudly into the receiver. You are just jealous, Harrison. You always have been. You sit in your tiny, depressing apartment, driving your boring little commuter car, hoarding money you did not even earn. Preston needs a break. He is under a tremendous amount of stress trying to launch his career. Stress from what? Sleeping until noon and playing video games. I shot back. I immediately regretted the words. Engaging with her delusions was always a losing game. It just gave her more ammunition. Just remember who gave you life, Harrison, she hissed through the phone. You are punishing us because you have no life of your own. She slammed the phone down, disconnecting the call. That upcoming Sunday was our mandatory family dinner. It was a tradition my father started when we were kids, and Sylvia insisted on keeping it, mostly as a theatrical stage to parade her grievances and guilt-trip me in person. I drove my modest sedan into her upscale, highly manicured neighborhood. The homeowners association fees alone on her house were more than my monthly rent. I pulled into the sprawling driveway and parked next to the gleaming new Porsche Panamera. It looked entirely absurd sitting there while I, the one managing the vast portfolio of money that paid for the driveway, drove a car with cloth seats and over 100,000 miles on the dashboard. I took a deep breath, plastered a neutral, unbothered expression on my face, and walked through the massive double front doors. The house smelled like expensive catering, heavy floral perfumes, and deep-rooted resentment. Gregory, my stepfather, was sitting in the living room reading a financial magazine. Gregory was a retired structural engineer, a quiet, non-confrontational man who had married Sylvia 2 years after my dad passed. He was a decent guy, but completely and utterly spineless when it came to my mother's demands. He functioned as her personal wallet for the things the trust would not cover. In return for his money, he got to live in a beautiful house, drive nice cars, and avoid conflict by just nodding along to whatever Sylvia said. Hey, Harrison, Gregory said softly, giving me a highly sympathetic nod. He knew exactly what kind of mood Sylvia was in. He had probably been listening to her complain about me all morning. Before I could even reply to him, Preston walked down the grand staircase. He was wearing a designer tracksuit and a gold chain that probably cost a full month of my salary. He did not even look at me. He just walked straight past me to the kitchen island and poured himself a heavy glass of expensive bourbon. We eventually moved to the dining room and sat down at the long mahogany table. Sylvia had ordered out from a high-end steakhouse. The table was covered in fine china and crystal glasses. She poured herself a large glass of expensive red wine, completely ignoring my empty water glass. So, Preston said, cutting into his perfectly cooked steak with a smirk, I hear you are playing dictator with the trust fund again, canceling my Miami trip. Real cool. Bro, very supportive of you. It is not a personal slush fund, Preston, I said calmly, keeping my eyes fixed on my plate. I refused to give him the reaction he wanted. If you want to go to Miami, get a job. Earn a salary. Use your own money. Preston laughed, a harsh, grating sound that echoed in the large room. A job? Like you? Sitting in a gray cubicle crunching numbers for 80 grand a year while a boss yells at you? No thanks. I am an entrepreneur. I am building a lifestyle brand. But you would not understand that. You have zero vision. You are just a corporate drone. Your entire brand is spending Dad's money and pretending you earned it, I replied, my voice cold and even. The atmosphere in the room instantly snapped. Sylvia slammed her heavy silver fork down on the fine china, making a sharp, ringing noise. Do not speak to your brother that way in my house. He is trying to build a life for himself. He just needs seed capital, which you continually and maliciously refuse to provide. I provide exactly what the law dictates, I said, my patience completely fracturing. Nothing more, nothing less. Preston sneered at me. His eyes were dark and malicious. He reached across the table, pretending to reach for the salt shaker. As he pulled his arm back, his elbow caught the stem of his full wine glass. It was not an accident. I saw the calculated, deliberate flick of his wrist. I saw his eyes lock onto my shirt. The dark red wine splashed violently across the table, completely soaking the front of my light gray dress shirt. The cold liquid seeped through the fabric to my skin instantly, staining the shirt beyond repair. "Oops," Preston said, his voice entirely flat. He did not even try to hide his arrogant smirk. Gregory jumped up from his chair, his face pale, grabbing a cloth napkin. "Jesus, Preston. Harrison, I am so sorry. Let me get some club soda from the kitchen." Sylvia just sighed loudly, rolling her eyes. "Great. Now I have to hire professional cleaners for this expensive rug. I suppose you will reject that cleaning invoice too, Harrison?" Not a single word of apology. Not a single ounce of guilt or reprimand for Preston. I sat there, dripping with dark red wine, looking at the three of them. In that specific, quiet moment, a permanent switch flipped inside my brain. I realized they did not just disagree with my financial decisions. They actively, deeply despised me. I was nothing but a locked bank vault to them, and they hated the combination. They wanted me gone. I stood up slowly, threw my stained napkin onto the table, and walked out the front door without saying a single word. I drove home in absolute silence. 3 days later, on a Wednesday afternoon, my phone rang. It was Preston. This was incredibly rare. Preston never called me directly unless he was in serious trouble, needed bail money, or wanted something massive. I answered cautiously, my guard fully up. "What is it, Preston?" "Hey, Harry." His voice was entirely too bright, overly enthusiastic and fake. It was the exact opposite of the hostile arrogance he displayed on Sunday. "Listen, man, I want to formally apologize for the dinner thing. It was super clumsy of me. I have just been really stressed about business." "Okay," I said, waiting for the real reason for the call. I knew the hook was coming. "So here is the deal. I have this massive networking event this weekend up in Cleveland. It is a huge opportunity for my brand. Lots of high-net-worth investors will be there. I really need to make a good impression. It could change my whole life. And my car is in the shop. The transmission is acting up. I saw you driving that company car last week. The Lamborghini Urus. I know your firm lets you guys sign out the luxury fleet vehicles for client weekends. Could I borrow it? Just for Saturday and Sunday? It would totally secure my image, man. Please. I am begging you. My firm did occasionally seize luxury assets in corporate settlements, and senior analysts with perfect driving records could sign them out for weekend client entertaining. I had taken the Urus home a few times just to keep the engine running and the battery charged. It was an absolute beast of a machine, a matte black super SUV worth over $200,000. "Absolutely not," I said immediately. "That is a major corporate liability, Preston. I cannot let you joyride to Cleveland in a Lamborghini that belongs to my employer. Come on. I will be so careful. I won't even speed. I just need to pull up to the venue in it. It shows status. It shows I am a player. Please, Harry. I am trying to actually do something with my life here. You said you wanted me to work. This is me working." Before I could shut him down completely, I heard the beep of a second call coming in. I looked at the screen. It was Sylvia. They were coordinating this attack. I put Preston on hold and switched over to my mother. "Harrison," Sylvia said, her tone authoritative and demanding. "Your brother just told me about the car situation. Give him the keys." "Mom, it is a Lamborghini. Preston is reckless. He has totaled 2 cars in the past 5 years. He is trying to work," she yelled into the phone. "You constantly belittle him for not having a career, and the very second he tries to network with wealthy investors to build something, you completely sabotage him. Are you trying to make him fail so you can feel superior? Be a real brother for once in your miserable life and support him. If you do this, I will drop the argument about the Porsche." The guilt trip was heavy, meticulously calculated, and sharp. She knew exactly how to twist the psychological knife. Deep down, beneath all the anger and the boundaries I had built, I still had a pathetic, lingering hope that my family could be fixed. That maybe, if I showed some grace, if I gave them a win, they would finally respect me. Fine, I said, rubbing my temples, feeling utterly defeated. But listen to me closely. If he puts a single scratch on that vehicle, if he gets a single speeding ticket, I am legally deducting the repair costs directly from his living allowance. The trust will not protect him. See? Was that so hard? She said sweetly, the venom vanishing instantly. She hung up. I switched back over to Preston. You can take it. But I am warning you, Preston. That car has a highly advanced corporate GPS tracker installed in it. I will know exactly where you go, where you stop, and how fast you drive. Do not mess around. You are the absolute best, bro. I swear to God. I will treat it like a newborn baby. I did not know it then, but I had just handed him the weapon they would try to use to end my life. I thought I was doing a favor. I thought the worst was over. I was so incredibly wrong. Friday evening arrived with a dense, humid heat. Preston showed up at my apartment complex to pick up the Lamborghini Urus. He was practically vibrating with excitement, bouncing on his heels. He had his friend Marcus with him. I never liked Marcus. He was a guy who always wore sunglasses indoors, spoke in vague half-sentences, and ran in some very sketchy underground gambling circles downtown. Seeing the two of them together, grinning like they had just won the lottery, made the hairs on the back of my neck stand straight up. I walked them down to the secure parking garage. The Urus sat there in the corner, a massive, aggressive piece of matte black engineering. Preston whistled loudly as we approached it. I tossed Preston the heavy, metallic key fob. He caught it effortlessly, his eyes wide with unadulterated greed. I am completely serious about the tracking system, Preston, I said, stepping into his personal space to make sure he understood me. Straight to Cleveland and back. No detours. No showing off for Marcus's friends. You park it at the hotel, you go to your event, and you drive it back safely. Preston gripped the keys, his eyes never leaving the car. Relax, Harrison. You worry way too much. It's just business. We are going to close some major deals this weekend. As they climbed into the luxurious leather interior and drove off, the roaring, aggressive exhaust note echoing off the concrete walls of the apartment buildings, I felt a deep, sickening knot forming in the pit of my stomach. My intuition was screaming at me. Every instinct I possessed told me I had just made a catastrophic error. Saturday morning began quietly. I made coffee and sat down to review some real estate portfolios for work. Around 10 a.m., my phone rang. The caller ID showed Desmond, my older cousin on my mother's side. Desmond was always the friendly one in the extended family, the guy who acted like a cheerful mediator in family disputes, always showing up to barbecues with a smile and a six-pack of beer. Hey, Harrison, how's it going, man? Just checking in on you, Desmond said, his tone entirely casual. I'm fine, Desmond. Just working from home today, reviewing some files. Good, good. Hey, I heard through the family grapevine that you lent Preston that crazy company car of yours. The Lamborghini? You must be a nervous wreck. Huh? You staying home all weekend just keeping an eye on the GPS tracker? It was a very odd, specific question. Desmond rarely cared about what Preston was doing. Yeah, I plan on keeping a close eye on him. Why do you ask? Oh, no reason at all. Just making conversation. You know how Preston is with cars. Anyway, you have a great weekend, man. Don't work too hard. He hung up quickly. I stared at my phone screen for a long time. Felt like a probe. Like he was trying to figure out exactly what my schedule was, and whether or not I was actively monitoring the vehicle. By Saturday afternoon, my anxiety got the better of me. I could not concentrate on my spreadsheets. I opened the corporate tracking app on my phone to check Preston's location in Cleveland. The app loaded, the little blue circle spinning on the screen, trying to locate the vehicle's satellite ping. The screen flashed a bright, warning red. Signal lost. Location services manually disabled. My heart dropped completely into my stomach. The knot in my gut twisted painfully tight. He turned it off. You cannot just lose signal on this specific tracking system. It runs on a dual satellite uplink designed to track stolen corporate assets. Someone had to manually go into the car's hidden diagnostic menu, input a code, and shut the system down. I dialed Preston's number immediately. It rang 4 times and went straight to voicemail. I typed out a furious text message. Turn the GPS back on right now, or I am calling the police and reporting the vehicle stolen. I am not playing games with you, Preston. Nothing. No reply. The delivery receipt showed it was delivered, but he was ignoring me. I paced my small apartment for hours. I tried to convince myself I was overreacting. Maybe he just didn't want me to see him stopping at a local bar. Maybe he was just being his usual rebellious, anti-authority self. But the silence stretched on through Saturday night and into Sunday morning. I could not eat. I could not focus on television or work. I knew with absolute certainty that if that car was heavily damaged, my career in finance was over. The firm would fire me for gross negligence, and I would be personally liable for hundreds of thousands of dollars in repairs. Sunday evening arrived. At 8 p.m., my phone finally buzzed on the coffee table. A text message from Preston. Chill out. Phone died and I forgot my charger. On my way back now. Car is perfect. Stop freaking out. I let out a heavy breath I felt like I had been holding for 2 straight days. He was alive. The car was coming back. But the intense feeling of dread did not evaporate. It just solidified into a cold certainty that something was wrong. At 9:30 p.m., the familiar, earth-shaking roar of the Lamborghini engine rumbled down my quiet street. I grabbed my jacket and walked out to the parking lot. Preston stepped out of the driver's side door. The very first thing that hit my senses was the smell. It was absolutely overpowering. Someone had practically emptied an entire aerosol can of cheap, chemical new car air freshener inside the cabin. It smelled like a desperate, frantic attempt to cover something up. The car itself was gleaming brilliantly under the yellow streetlights. It had just been washed and waxed. The massive tires were wet with a heavy coat of tire shine. Preston completely avoided making eye contact with me. He tossed the keys from a few feet away, keeping his distance. His hands were visibly shaking. His skin was pale and sweaty. "Thanks for the loan," he said. His voice unusually high-pitched and tight. "Ran great. No issues at all." "Why did you wash it?" I asked, stepping closer to him. Preston never cleaned up after himself. He left trash in my apartment. He certainly did not detail cars before returning them. "I told you I would take care of it," he stammered, backing away toward the street edge. "Look, I gotta run. Mom is waiting down the block to give me a ride home. I'm exhausted." "Wait a minute," I demanded, stepping forward and grabbing his upper arm. His muscles were rigid, tense, coiled like a spring ready to snap. "Why did you disable the GPS? Where exactly did you go, Preston?" He violently yanked his arm away from my grip. "I didn't disable anything. The Bluetooth on my phone must have glitched the system out. God, you are so paranoid and controlling. The car is perfectly fine, Harrison. Stop interrogating me like I'm a criminal." He turned and practically sprinted down the concrete sidewalk. A moment later, I saw the distinctive LED headlights of Sylvia's Porsche Panamera flick on down the street. Preston jumped into the passenger seat, and she sped off into the night, running a stop sign in the process. I stood completely alone in the dark parking lot, gripping the heavy key fob in my hand. I walked slowly around the Urus. The body panels looked pristine. No dents, no scratches, no broken glass. I ran my hand along the hood. Felt fine. I went back inside and sat heavily on my couch. My phone dinged. It was a text message from Gregory, my quiet stepfather. "Harrison, Preston just walked in the door. He looks terrified, like he literally saw a ghost. He is shaking. Sylvia is acting frantic and yelling at him in the kitchen. Is the car okay? Did something happen this weekend?" I stared at the glowing screen. Even passive, quiet Gregory noticed something was horribly wrong. If Preston was terrified, it was not because he had a successful networking event. It was because he had done something unforgivable. I texted back. "He says the car is fine. But he is lying. I'll check it in the morning." I did not sleep a single minute that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt a creeping, suffocating darkness closing in on me. I knew my brother. I knew my mother. They were hiding something massive. And tomorrow morning, I was going to find out exactly what kind of betrayal they had orchestrated. I thought the worst was over. I was so incredibly wrong. Monday morning broke with a heavy, relentless thunderstorm. The sky was the color of bruised iron, and the rain was coming down in sheets, flooding the gutters of the apartment complex. I had a severe tension headache, the kind that pulses right behind your eyes and makes you nauseous. I needed to get the Urus back to the wealth management firm's secure underground lot before my 9 a.m. strategy meeting. I walked out into the rain and climbed into the driver's seat. The overpowering, sickening smell of the cheap air freshener immediately made me gag. I pushed the ignition button. The massive V8 engine roared to life, sounding perfectly normal, idling smoothly. "You are just being paranoid, Harrison," I muttered to myself, shifting the heavy gear selector into drive. "He just washed the car. It's fine." My route to the corporate office required 3 miles of local, winding suburban roads, followed by a 10-mile stretch on Interstate 71. On I-71, the official speed limit was 65 miles per hour, but the flow of morning commuter traffic usually pushed everyone to do 80. For the first mile, keeping the speed firmly under 30 miles per hour, the car felt incredibly solid. It handled exactly like a brand new $250,000 machine should. Then, I turned onto the wider, multi-lane boulevard leading toward the highway. I pressed the accelerator, pushing the speed up to 45 miles per hour. That is exactly when the nightmare became tangible. It started as a subtle, deep vibration in the floorboards. A low, rhythmic thrum-thrum-thrum that reverberated through my dress shoes. I tightened my grip on the leather steering wheel, frowning deeply. Was it a flat tire? Did he run over a nail? I quickly glanced at the digital dashboard display. The tire pressure monitoring system showed optimal pressure all around. I pushed the gas pedal a little more, hitting 50 miles per hour. The low vibration instantly exploded into a violent, terrifying shake. The steering wheel jerked back and forth in my hands so hard my wrists ached. The entire front passenger side of the heavy SUV felt completely loose, like it was floating unattached to the main chassis. Then came the sound. A horrifying, heavy clunk-clunk-clunk of bare metal grinding against metal. Adrenaline and pure panic surged through my chest. This was not a tire balancing issue. This was not a minor alignment problem. Something underneath this car was structurally destroyed. Directly ahead of me, only a quarter-mile down the road, was the long on-ramp for Interstate 71. The traffic on the ramp was accelerating rapidly to merge at 70 miles per hour. If I got on that ramp, I would have to accelerate hard to blend in with the massive semi-trucks and speeding commuters. My foot hovered over the gas pedal. The car was shaking violently now, pulling hard to the right. In that split second, a voice echoed clearly in my head. It was my father's voice. The exact tone he used when he was warning me about a bad real estate deal. "Stop the car, Harrison. Do not get on that highway. Brake now." I listened. I slammed on the brakes. The heavy SUV swerved slightly, fighting my control, the anti-lock brakes stuttering on the wet pavement. I jerked the steering wheel hard to the right, throwing on my hazard lights, and pulled directly into the gravel parking lot of Victor's Auto Repair, a small, independent shop just half a mile before the highway entrance. Victor was a veteran master mechanic who had worked on my father's commercial fleet for over 20 years. He was grumpy, brutally honest, and knew the internal mechanics of cars better than anyone in the state of Ohio. I rolled into the open garage bay at barely 10 miles per hour. The car sounded like a dying animal, clunking and grinding with every rotation of the tire. Victor wiped thick black grease off his calloused hands with a rag and walked over, his eyes narrowing at the luxurious Lamborghini. "Harrison, hell of a ride for a Monday morning. What the hell did you do to it?" "I didn't do anything to it, Victor," I said, my voice shaking slightly as I stepped out into the damp garage air. "My brother Preston borrowed it this weekend. It is shaking violently. It feels like the front wheel is going to completely detach and fall off." Victor's expression darkened immediately. He knew Preston's reputation. Leave the engine running. Step back. Let me get it up on the hydraulic lift. I paced nervously in the small, dingy waiting room, which smelled heavily of stale coffee and burnt rubber. I listened to the loud pneumatic hum of the lift raising the heavy SUV high into the air. 5 minutes passed, then 10 minutes. The absolute silence from the garage bay was deafening. Suddenly, the door to the waiting room swung open. Victor stood there. His face, usually ruddy and weathered, had lost all its color. He looked physically sick. "Harrison," he said, his voice dropping to a gravelly, serious whisper. "You need to come out here and look at this. Right now." I followed him out into the garage and walked under the suspended vehicle. He clicked on a high-powered LED flashlight and pointed the intense beam directly at the front passenger side wheel assembly. "Look closely at the lower control arm," Victor commanded, pointing with a greasy finger. I stepped closer, squinting against the harsh light. Even with my limited mechanical knowledge, I could clearly see the absolute devastation. The thick, solid steel bar of the control arm had a massive, jagged crack running almost entirely through it. It was barely holding together by a thin, fragile sliver of warped metal. "He hit something incredibly hard," Victor said, his tone analytical but grim. "Probably a solid concrete curb doing at least 50 miles an hour. He crushed the rim and cracked the suspension. But that is not what scares me, Harrison. Look at the lug nuts holding the wheel to the hub." He shifted the beam of light onto the 5 bolts securing the wheel. "They are stripped. All of them. And look right here. There is fresh, clean grease on the threads. Someone took this wheel off, saw the catastrophic, fatal damage to the control arm, and purposely threaded these stripped nuts back on just tight enough to hold the wheel in place at very low neighborhood speeds." Victor turned to me, his eyes wide with genuine horror and anger. "Harrison, listen to me very carefully. If you had taken this massive car onto I-71 this morning, the vibration of hitting 60 miles an hour would have snapped that cracked control arm instantly. The entire wheel would have folded directly under the chassis. In a vehicle this heavy at that speed on wet pavement, you would have violently rolled over multiple times. You would have been crushed. You would be dead right now." My blood ran ice cold. The walls of the garage seemed to spin around me. The roaring sound of the rain outside faded into white noise. "Are you sure?" I choked out, grabbing a toolbox for physical support. "Are you absolutely sure someone did this on purpose? Maybe he just didn't know." "Look at the fresh grease, Harrison," Victor yelled, losing his professional composure. No certified mechanic in the entire world would reattach a wheel to a snapped control arm unless they were actively trying to hide the damage. "This is a deliberate death trap, Harrison. Someone sent you out on the road to die today. Preston." He brought it back and blatantly lied to my face. He sprayed air freshener to cover the smell of burnt rubber. But why? Was he just that pathetic and cowardly about paying a repair bill? Would he really risk his own brother's life over money? Then, a sudden, blinding realization hit my brain like a lightning bolt. The corporate dashcam. 6 months ago, the wealth management firm had upgraded the security protocol on all luxury fleet vehicles due to rising insurance costs. They installed hidden, hardwired dashcams seamlessly integrated behind the rearview mirrors. They were not just front-facing. They had cabin-facing lenses and high-fidelity audio microphones. And crucially, they had a hypersensitive parking mode. If the car suffered a heavy physical impact, the camera would automatically wake up, save the footage of the crash, and continue to record the audio inside the cabin to catch hit-and-run drivers. "Victor," I said, my voice trembling with a massive surge of adrenaline. "I need to get into the cabin of that car right now. There is a hidden camera behind the mirror. If he crashed it, that camera caught absolutely everything." Victor quickly lowered the hydraulic lift just enough for me to reach inside the open door. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely pry the small plastic casing off the back of the rearview mirror. After a few seconds of struggling, I popped out the tiny microSD card. "I have a laptop in the back office," Victor said, already walking briskly toward the messy back room. We sat down in front of his dusty, grease-stained computer. I inserted the tiny memory card into the reader. The main folder opened on the screen, displaying dozens of mundane video files from the weekend. I quickly sorted them by date and frantically scanned the list for files tagged with the red system exclamation mark. Impact event recorded. There were 2 specific files from Saturday afternoon. I hovered my mouse over the first one. My heart hammered aggressively against my ribs as the media player opened. I was about to find out exactly what my arrogant brother did to nearly kill me. I just did not realize in that quiet moment in the garage that I was also about to find out exactly what my own mother was truly capable of. I sat in that freezing, grease-stained back office of Victor's auto shop, staring at the glowing computer screen. The file was labeled with a string of numbers and the date from Saturday afternoon. My hand was shaking so badly that the mouse cursor jittered across the screen before I finally managed to double-click the video file. The media player opened, taking up the entire screen. At first, it was just a clear, wide-angle view of a sunny suburban street in Cleveland. The high-definition camera captured everything perfectly. The digital overlay in the bottom right corner displayed the vehicle's speed, 58 miles per hour in a 35-mile-per-hour residential zone. The cabin audio kicked in, loud and crystal clear. Heavy bass from the stereo was vibrating the microphone. I could hear Preston laughing, a loud, obnoxious sound, followed by the voice of his friend Marcus. They were hyping each other up, talking about the networking event, but mostly they were bragging about the car. "Man, you should see the way people look at us in this thing," Preston was saying, his voice filled with unearned arrogance. "I told you it's all about projecting wealth. You project it, you attract it. Your brother is a sucker for letting you take this," Marcus replied, laughing. "You think he's sitting at home checking the app?" "I disabled that stupid tracker the second we crossed the city limits," Preston bragged. "He has no idea. I own this weekend. Then it happened. It was so fast it made my heart jump into my throat." A stray golden retriever darted out from behind a parked delivery van on the right side of the street. Preston panicked. Instead of hitting the brakes straight on, he jerked the steering wheel violently to the right, overcompensating in a desperate attempt to avoid the dog. The heavy Lamborghini Urus swerved wildly. The tires shrieked against the asphalt. The camera violently shook, the image blurring for a fraction of a second. Crunch. The sound of the impact was sickening. It was a heavy, metallic, bone-jarring thud as the massive front passenger wheel slammed directly into a high, reinforced concrete curb at over 50 miles per hour. The sheer force of the impact triggered the vehicle's collision sensors. The hazard lights automatically flashed, and a high-pitched warning chime began blaring inside the cabin. The car ground to a harsh, unnatural halt. The heavy bass of the stereo was instantly cut off, replaced by the frantic, heavy breathing of my brother. "Oh my God," Preston stammered, his voice completely devoid of all that earlier arrogance. "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God." I listened as the driver's side door opened. The camera was still recording in parking mode, capturing the audio from outside the vehicle. "Dude, look at the wheel," Marcus yelled from the sidewalk. "It's completely sideways. It's tucked under the fender." "Shut up, Marcus. Just shut up." Preston was hyperventilating now. I could hear him pacing frantically on the pavement. "Harrison is going to kill me. He is literally going to murder me. I can't pay for this. I have zero money. The trust won't cover this." "Call your mom, man," Marcus urged. "Call Sylvia." There was a tense silence, broken only by the sound of Preston dialing his phone and putting it on speaker. It rang twice before Sylvia answered. "Preston, sweetheart, how is the event?" she asked, her voice light and conversational. Mom, you have to help me. I wrecked the car. I wrecked Harrison's company car." The line went dead silent for a terrifying 3 seconds. When Sylvia finally spoke, the warmth was completely gone from her voice. It was replaced by a cold, calculating sharpness. "Did you call the police? Did you call the insurance company?" No, I'm terrified. The wheel looks completely broken. It's making this horrible grinding noise. Mom, Harrison is going to sue me. He warned me. He's going to deduct it from my allowance. I'll be ruined." Do exactly as I say, Preston, Sylvia ordered, her voice devoid of any maternal comfort. It was the voice of a general managing a crisis. Do not, under any circumstances, call your brother. Where exactly are you? I'm near the industrial park on West 4th Street. Okay, listen to me. There is a small auto repair shop about 3 blocks down from there. Sal's garage. It is a cash-only dump, and they do not ask questions. I have used them before when your father cut my credit cards. Limp the car there. Drive 5 miles an hour. Use the back alleys. I am leaving the house right now. I will meet you there. But Mom, it's shaking. It sounds like it's going to fall apart. Do it, Preston. Do not argue with me. The recording abruptly ended. I sat back in the cheap office chair, exhaling a breath I didn't realize I had been holding. The silence in the garage was deafening. My hands were gripping the edge of the desk so tightly my knuckles were completely white. He crashed it, I whispered, my voice completely hollow. He crashed it, and she told him to hide it. Victor placed a heavy, calloused hand on my shoulder. Check the second video, Harrison. If they went to that shady shop, the parking camera might have picked up the audio while it was turned off. I swallowed hard, my throat feeling like sandpaper. I moved the mouse and clicked on the second file. The timestamp was 45 minutes later. This was the video that would completely alter the trajectory of my entire life. The screen was dark. The dashcam was pointed at the interior of a cluttered, dimly lit garage bay. The driver's side window was rolled down, and the hypersensitive microphone was perfectly picking up the voices echoing off the concrete walls of the shop. I immediately recognized Preston's pathetic whimpering. And then, I heard the heavy, clomping boots of a man walking around the vehicle. Lady, your kid really did a number on this machine, a rough, raspy voice said. This had to be Sal, the shady mechanic. The lower control arm is snapped clean through. The tie rod is bent like a pretzel, and the custom rim is destroyed. It's a miracle he even got it into the bay. Can you fix it? That was Sylvia. She had arrived. She sounded incredibly annoyed, not concerned. Fix it? Yeah, I can fix anything with an engine. But you need a new suspension arm, a new tie rod, a new rim, and a full alignment. For a Lamborghini, you're looking at $2,000 absolute minimum. And I cannot even order the specialized parts until Monday morning. $2,000? Sylvia shrieked, her voice echoing shrilly in the garage. I do not have $2,000 in cash. My son controls the trust accounts. Can't you just patch it up? Patch it? Sal scoffed loudly. Lady, this is the main suspension. You do not patch this. The wheel is barely hanging on by a thread of metal. There was a long, heavy silence. I closed my eyes, picturing my mother standing in that dingy garage, her mind racing, doing the twisted, sociopathic math she was so famous for. What if you just put the wheel back on? Sylvia asked. Her voice had dropped an octave. It was smoother now, colder. Just tighten the bolts up. Make it look perfectly straight, just so it looks normal from the outside. I can hammer the rim back so it holds air, Sal said, sounding deeply skeptical and uncomfortable. And I can bolt the wheel back onto the hub. But that control arm is fundamentally cracked. If he hits a pothole or if he goes over 50 miles an hour, that wheel is coming completely off. It is a literal death trap. He is just driving it home, Sylvia said dismissively. It is a 3-hour drive back to Columbus. Preston whined loudly. Mom, I cannot drive it on the interstate like that. It's terrifying. You are not driving it, Preston, Sylvia said sharply. We will leave it parked here until tomorrow. Then you drive it slowly, on the back roads, back to Harrison's apartment on Sunday night. Keep it under 40 miles an hour the entire way. But what about Harrison? Preston asked, his voice trembling. He drives on Interstate 71 to the firm every single morning. He drives fast, Mom. If he takes it on the highway... Silence. Long, heavy, suffocating silence. The mechanic spoke up again, his voice tight. Look, lady, I don't care about your family drama. But if he takes this vehicle on the highway, he is going to flip it. I ain't legally liable for that. I will make you sign a cash waiver." Then Sylvia spoke, and her words turned the blood in my veins into absolute ice. "Fine. Let him drive it." "Mom!" Preston sounded genuinely shocked for a fraction of a second. "Quiet, Preston. Think for a single second. Just use your brain. If the car catastrophically fails while he's driving on the interstate, it is a tragic accident. Harrison has a massive life insurance policy through the firm. And if the worst happens, the $3 million trust automatically goes to his next of kin. That is us. The money reverts to us." I clamped a hand over my mouth to stifle a physical gag. My stomach violently lurched. "So?" Preston's voice was shaking, but he was no longer arguing. The greed had completely overridden his temporary guilt. "So we just give it back to him and say nothing?" "Exactly," Sylvia said, her tone terrifyingly calm. "Pay the man to put the wheel back on. Go buy some air freshener to cover the smell of the burnt rubber. Take it to a car wash. Make it look brand new. Do not say a single word. If he notices the shaking, he takes it to a shop. If he doesn't notice, well, that's in God's hands." I heard the sound of a zipper opening. "Here is $500 in cash," Sylvia told the mechanic. "Tighten the lug nuts just enough to hold the wheel straight until Monday morning. And you keep your mouth entirely shut." The video ended. The screen went black. I sat there, completely frozen in time. The silence in Victor's office was so heavy it felt physically crushing. I felt like someone had reached into my chest and hollowed out my internal organs. My own mother did not just neglect to fix a car. She actively paid a man to turn a vehicle into a guided missile aimed directly at my life. She coldly calculated the odds of my violent death and decided that the financial payout was worth the risk of losing her firstborn son. Victor put a heavy, trembling hand on my shoulder. "Harrison," he said softly, his voice thick with emotion. "I am so sorry. You need to call the police right now." "No," I said, wiping a single cold tear from my cheek. The shock was already fading, instantly replaced by a cold, hardened, absolute rage I had never experienced before in my life. "Not yet. The police will take months to investigate. Lawyers will argue jurisdiction. She will claim she didn't mean it, or that she didn't know the extent of the damage. I need to make sure she has absolutely nowhere to hide. I need to make sure Gregory sees this. Your stepdad. He is the only thing holding their lavish lifestyle together right now," I said, standing up. My legs felt like lead, but my mind was laser-focused. "He pays all the daily bills the trust doesn't cover. He gives them their social standing. If he knows what they really are, he will completely destroy them." I looked at the laptop. "I am taking this video file, Victor, and I am going to need you to call a tow truck for me." I drove my personal sedan straight to Nadine's office. Nadine had been my best friend since our first year of college. She was now a ruthless corporate litigation lawyer with a mind like a steel trap and a tolerance for nonsense that hovered at absolute zero. When I walked into her sleek, glass-walled office and played the dashcam video for her, she did not gasp. She did not cry. She simply stood up, locked her office door, and paced the room, her heels clicking aggressively on the hardwood floor. "This is attempted murder, Harrison," Nadine said, pointing a manicured finger at the laptop screen. "Or, at the very minimum, reckless endangerment, conspiracy to commit insurance fraud, and criminal negligence. We have them on tape. We can bury them so deep they won't see daylight." "I know," I said, sipping the black coffee her assistant had brought me. My hands had finally stopped shaking. "But I don't just want them sitting in a jail cell. I want them to lose everything they value. I want them to feel the ground completely crumble beneath their feet before the handcuffs even go on." Nadine stopped pacing and looked at me, a slow, predatory smile spreading across her face. "You want to go nuclear. I want to send the car back," I said, "directly to Gregory." Nadine nodded slowly, understanding the psychological warfare immediately. "Gregory is their moral compass. He's passive, but he's not evil. If he sees this footage, he will leave her, I finished. And without Gregory's income and without the trust money, which I am legally cutting off today, Sylvia is absolutely nothing. We spent the next 3 hours planning the execution. Nadine drafted the emergency legal paperwork to petition the court for an immediate suspension of my trusteeship, citing hostile and criminal actions by beneficiaries, so that a third-party bank would take over temporarily. That meant freezing all their assets and allowances instantly. Then we planned the physical delivery. Let's pause for a moment. Thank you for staying with me this far. You're truly amazing. Please help me by liking the video and commenting the number 1 below so I know you've been here with me until this point. This not only helps more people discover this story, but also lets me know that my experiences mean something to someone. Your support is the greatest motivation for me to keep sharing the rest of this journey. You cannot just tow it there and leave it, Nadine said, tapping her pen against the desk. You need to make absolutely sure Gregory receives the evidence directly. You need a letter, something short, something undeniable that forces him to look. I grabbed a legal notepad. I wrote 4 different drafts before I settled on the final, devastating note. It wasn't angry. It wasn't emotional. It was just brutally factual. Gregory, your wife and your stepson decided that saving $2,000 was worth significantly more than my life. They sent me onto the interstate highway in a rigged death trap, actively hoping for an insurance payout. Don't take my word for it. Watch the USB drive attached to this note. I am sorry you have to see this, but you need to know who you were sleeping next to. Harrison. Perfect, Nadine said, reading it over my shoulder. It completely bypasses Sylvia's ability to spin the narrative. It puts the absolute burden of truth squarely on him. He has to watch it. I called the towing company Victor recommended. I requested a specific driver. A huge, no-nonsense guy named Gareth who had towed my father's commercial trucks for years. I gave the dispatcher very specific instructions. I need a luxury vehicle delivered to a residential address, I told Gareth over the phone. It is a non-running vehicle. It needs to be dropped right in the center of the driveway. And Gareth, this is the most important part. You must hand the keys and the envelope directly to the man of the house. Do not give it to the woman. Consider it done, Harrison, Gareth said. Tuesday morning arrived, the day of absolute reckoning. I woke up with a strange, eerie sense of calm. It was the cold, focused calm of a soldier stepping onto a battlefield knowing he has the superior artillery. I dressed in my sharpest, most expensive tailored suit, the one Sylvia always said made me look too stiff. Today, I wanted to look exactly like what I was, the man in total control. I went back to Victor's shop. The Lamborghini Urus was sitting in the lot, looking innocent, sleek, and shiny. You would never know by looking at its beautiful exterior that it was a guided missile specifically aimed at my head. Gareth is pulling up now, Victor said, handing me the small envelope. Inside was the USB drive. I had made 4 copies. 1 for the police, 1 for Nadine, 1 for the bank, and this one for Gregory. The massive flatbed tow truck arrived. Watching the Urus being slowly winched up onto the tilted bed felt incredibly symbolic. They were hauling away the physical evidence of my mother's ultimate betrayal. Here's the package, I told Gareth, handing him the thick manila envelope containing the key fob and the note with the USB taped securely inside. Give this only to Gregory. Older guy, gray hair, usually looks tired. Got it, Gareth nodded, securing the chains to the car's chassis. What if the crazy lady comes out screaming? Ignore her completely, I said. Just drop the car, block the driveway, and hand the package to Gregory. I got into Nadine's car. She insisted on driving me so I wouldn't be alone during the fallout. We followed the heavy tow truck from a safe distance. The drive to my mother's gated community usually took 20 minutes. Today it felt like 5 seconds. My heart started to race again as we turned into the subdivision. The perfectly manicured lawns, the massive oak trees, the flawless brick facades of the multi-million-dollar houses. It all looked so peaceful, so perfect. It was a complete lie. Are you ready for this? Nadine asked, gripping the steering wheel, her eyes locked on the road ahead. "I have been ready since the moment she told the mechanic to let me drive it," I replied, my voice steady. We pulled over about 4 houses down, parking under the shade of a large tree. We had a perfect, unobstructed view of the sprawling driveway. Sylvia's Porsche Panamera was parked there. Gregory's SUV was there. They were both home. The flatbed tow truck backed slowly into the driveway. The loud, piercing reverse alarm, beep, 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 cut through the quiet, wealthy morning air like a siren. I saw the massive front double doors swing open. Sylvia came out first. She was wearing a silk robe, holding a coffee cup, looking deeply confused. Then, as her eyes focused and she recognized the matte black Lamborghini sitting on the tilted truck bed, her confusion instantly morphed into sheer panic. She dropped her coffee cup. It shattered on the porch. She started waving her arms frantically at Gareth. "She's trying to stop him from unloading it," Nadine noted, leaning forward. "She can't," I said. Then, Gregory stepped out onto the porch. He was dressed for his morning golf game. He walked past a frantic Sylvia, looking deeply puzzled. Why was Harrison's company car being towed to their house? I watched Gareth hop down from the cab of the truck. He completely ignored Sylvia, who was now yelling and pointing at the street. Gareth walked straight up the steps, past her flailing arms, and handed the thick envelope directly to Gregory. "The package is delivered," I whispered, feeling the tension peak. From my vantage point down the street, the entire scene played out like a silent movie. I saw Sylvia lunge, trying to physically snatch the envelope from Gregory's hands. She knew. She must have realized in that exact second that I knew everything. Why else would I send the broken car back on a tow truck instead of repairing it? But Gregory pulled his arm away. He was a tall, sturdy man, and when he stood his ground, he was immovable. He said something sharp to her. I imagined it was, "Back off. Let me see this." And he tore open the envelope. He read the note. Even from 50 yards away, I saw his entire posture change. It was immediate. His broad shoulders dropped. He looked at the broken car, then down at the note, then slowly turned his head to look at Sylvia. Sylvia was absolutely frantic now. She was grabbing at his golf shirt, pointing at the car, her mouth moving a mile a minute, probably spinning some elaborate, desperate lie about how Harrison is just being dramatic, or Preston had a little bump. It's a misunderstanding. Gregory did not even look at her. He turned on his heel and walked straight back into the house, tightly clutching the envelope and the USB drive. Sylvia chased after him, looking absolutely terrified. The heavy front door slammed shut behind them. Gareth efficiently unloaded the Lamborghini. He dropped it right in the dead center of the driveway, completely and effectively blocking Sylvia's Porsche from leaving. He unhooked the chains, gave me a subtle thumbs up as he drove past our parked car, and left the neighborhood. "Now we wait," Nadine said, checking her watch. I checked the dashboard clock. It was 10:15 a.m. Inside that massive house, Gregory was walking to his home office. He was booting up his computer. He was plugging in the drive. He was about to hear his wife, the woman he provided everything for, agreeing to gamble with her own son's life for an insurance check. I tried to imagine what was happening in that room. Was he denying it? Was she screaming? 10 minutes passed. Nothing but silence. 15 minutes. The tension in the car was suffocating. Then, at exactly 10:35 a.m., the front doors flew violently open. It wasn't Gregory who came out first. It was a massive, expensive porcelain vase that I knew cost over $600. It flew out the door, sailed through the air, and smashed into 1,000 pieces on the concrete driveway. "Whoa!" Nadine muttered, her eyes wide. Then came the shouting. We could hear it echoing down the street. It was Gregory's voice. In the 5 years I had known him, I had never once heard him raise his voice. It was a deep, booming, terrifying sound of pure, unadulterated fury. Sylvia ran out of the house. She was crying, really crying this time, not her fake, manipulative tears. Her face was red, her hair a mess. She was barefoot. Gregory appeared in the doorway. He was holding a large leather suitcase. It wasn't neatly packed. Clothes were hanging out of it. He threw it as hard as he could down the steps. Then he started throwing loose items. Shoes, a coat, a jewelry box. He's kicking her out, I said. A massive, overwhelming wave of relief washing over my entire body. He believes me. Sylvia scrambled on the driveway, trying to grab his arm, begging him. Gregory shoved her away. It wasn't violently abusive, but it was forceful and definitive. He pointed a rigid finger directly in her face and shouted something that made her physically recoil and collapse onto the grass. He walked purposefully to his SUV. He got in, started the engine, and threw it in reverse. Because the driveway was blocked by the Lamborghini, he aggressively backed his heavy SUV right over Sylvia's perfectly manicured lawn, leaving deep, muddy tire trenches in the grass, just to get around the cars. He didn't look back at Sylvia, who was sobbing hysterically on the lawn. He drove past us. I saw his face through the window. He looked completely broken. The stoic engineer was crying. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from Gregory. I am so sorry, Harrison. I didn't know. I swear to God Almighty, I didn't know she was capable of this. I am driving straight to the police precinct downtown. Meet me there. I showed the phone screen to Nadine. It's over, I said, leaning my head back against the seat, feeling lighter than I had in years. The entire house of cards just collapsed. We met Gregory at the precinct. He looked like he had aged 15 years in a single hour. When he saw me, he completely broke down. He hugged me, holding on tight, shaking uncontrollably. I heard the recording, he kept saying, his voice cracking. I heard her voice. How could she? You are her own flesh and blood. How could she do that? She loves money more, Gregory, I said gently, patting his back. She always has. She just finally showed her true face. We filed the official police report together. With the high-definition video evidence, the crystal-clear audio recording, Gregory's corroborating testimony about Preston's behavior, and Victor's expert mechanical statement on the sabotaged car, Detective Lewis did not hesitate for a second. Within 2 hours, they issued felony arrest warrants for Sylvia and Preston for conspiracy to commit insurance fraud, reckless endangerment, and attempted grievous bodily harm. The arrest did not happen quietly. Nadine's contacts at the precinct told me later that when the squad cars pulled up to the house, Preston actually tried to run out the back door and jump the fence, but was quickly tackled by an officer in the neighbor's yard. He was crying, screaming that it was all his mother's idea. Sylvia, true to her nature to the bitter end, tried to bribe the arresting officer with a massive diamond ring she was wearing. They happily tacked on a felony bribery charge to her growing list. I didn't go to watch the arrest. I didn't need to. I went back to my quiet apartment, locked the door, turned off my phone, and slept for 14 straight hours. The legal battle that followed over the next 6 months was incredibly messy, highly publicized in local circles, but ultimately swift and decisive. Because I did not physically drive the car onto the highway and sustain bodily injuries, the attempted murder charges were difficult to prove in a trial setting. Nadine advised the prosecutor to offer a plea deal to avoid a lengthy, draining trial that Sylvia would try to turn into a media circus. Sylvia, facing decades if convicted by a jury, pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit fraud, criminal negligence, and bribery of a law enforcement officer. Because of the severity of the audio recording, the judge showed absolutely no mercy. She was sentenced to 3 years in a minimal security state prison, followed by 5 years of strict probation. Preston, instantly turning on his mother and providing a full confession in hopes of a better deal, pleaded guilty to reckless endangerment and destruction of property. He received 1 year in county jail and 500 hours of mandatory community service. But for people like Sylvia and Preston, the real punishment was never the jail time. It was the absolute, crushing financial ruin. 2 days after the arrests, Mr. Caldwell, the senior director at the bank that managed the trust, called me into his mahogany-paneled office. Nadine was sitting right beside me. "Harrison," Mr. Caldwell said, pushing his heavy glasses up his nose, looking at a thick legal binder. Your father was an incredibly shrewd man. He anticipated that Sylvia might try to financially drain you, but he also anticipated she might try something far worse to get to the principal funds. What do you mean? I asked. I mean the moral turpitude clause, Caldwell said, sliding a highlighted document across the desk. It is a hidden clause your father insisted I write into the deepest bylaws of the trust. A clause you didn't even know existed. It explicitly states that if any beneficiary acts with criminal intent against the trustee, or brings severe public disgrace to the family name resulting in a felony conviction, they immediately and irrevocably forfeit all rights, allowances, and claims to the fund. I stared at the document. The legal jargon was dense, but the meaning was crystal clear. Furthermore, Caldwell continued, upon the triggering of this clause, the trust dissolves as a managed entity, and the entire principal balance, all $3 million, the real estate portfolio, the liquid assets, transfers completely and solely into your personal ownership. Nadine smiled, leaning back in her chair. I was stunned. My father had reached beyond the grave to protect me one last time. I wasn't just the manager anymore. The money was mine. Sylvia lost her massive monthly allowance. Permanently. Preston lost his housing stipend and trust access. Permanently. And because Gregory filed for a highly aggressive divorce the very next morning, securing a ruthless shark of a lawyer, Sylvia lost the house. It was fully in Gregory's name. He sold the massive estate 3 months later, keeping the profits, and leaving Sylvia with absolutely nothing but her designer clothes. There was one last loose end to tie up. Desmond. The week after the sentencing, I invited Desmond to a coffee shop downtown. He showed up smiling, trying to act supportive, playing the concerned cousin. Man, I can't believe Aunt Sylvia did that, Desmond said, shaking his head. It's crazy. Family is crazy, right? I slid a printed bank statement across the table. It was from Sylvia's personal checking account, which was frozen during the investigation but accessible to me as the former trustee. I had highlighted 3 recurring Zelle transfers of $500, sent directly to Desmond. The dates perfectly matched the weekends I was out of town or driving the corporate cars. Desmond's smile vanished. His face went completely pale. You were her spy, I said, my voice dangerously low. You called me that Saturday morning to see if I was tracking the car, so you could report back to her. You sold out my safety for $500 a month. Harrison, bro, listen. I didn't know she was gonna... Shut your mouth, I interrupted, standing up. You are dead to me. If you ever contact me, if you ever come near my firm, or if you ever mention my name to anyone in this city, I will have Nadine bury you in civil lawsuits so deep you will be paying my legal fees until the day you die. Keep the money. Buy yourself some integrity. I walked out of the coffee shop, leaving him stammering at the table. Everything they had plotted to kill me for, the money, the status, the control, had vanished like smoke in the wind, leaving them with exactly what they deserved. I remember the exact day of the final sentencing hearing. I sat quietly in the back row of the crowded courtroom. Sylvia was led in wearing an oversized, stiff orange jumpsuit. Her hair, which used to be perfectly coiffed and dyed every 2 weeks, was now showing thick roots of gray. She looked incredibly small. She looked old. When Judge Harper, a stern, no-nonsense woman who had personally reviewed the dashcam footage, asked if Sylvia had anything to say before the sentence was handed down, Sylvia slowly turned around and looked directly at me. I expected her to scream. I expected her to hurl insults, to blame me for ruining her life, to play the ultimate victim one last time. But she didn't. She just looked confused, as if her narcissistic brain still, fundamentally, could not comprehend why I hadn't just died on the highway and let her have the money. In her twisted reality, I was the one who was selfish for surviving. I just wanted what was best for my family's future, she told the judge, her voice trembling with fake sorrow. Judge Harper looked over her reading glasses, her expression filled with absolute disgust. Mrs. Blake, you wanted what was best for your wallet. You were actively willing to sacrifice your own child on the altar of your greed. You are a disgrace to the concept of motherhood. May God have mercy on your soul, because this court will not. After the heavy wooden gavel banged, finalizing the sentence, Gregory walked me out to the courthouse parking lot. I'm moving out to Arizona next week, he told me, looking up at the sky. My brother lives out there in Scottsdale. I need to get away from this city. There are too many toxic memories here. I understand, I said, shaking his hand firmly. Take care of yourself, Gregory. Thank you for doing the right thing. You were the only real parent I had these last few years. You too, kiddo. You're a good man. Your dad would be incredibly proud of you. He pointed to my car, a brand new, top-of-the-line SUV I had bought fully in cash with my own money from the newly acquired estate. Just make sure you check your lug nuts. We both laughed, but it was a dry, sad laugh, born from surviving a trauma we would both carry forever. It has been 1 full year since that day in court. My life is quiet now. Delightfully, beautifully, peacefully quiet. I still work at the wealth management firm, but I cut my hours back to consult part-time. I manage my father's real estate portfolio on my own terms now, expanding it, building it exactly the way he taught me. I don't have to stress over denying spa bills or arguing about Porsche payments. Sylvia sends me long, rambling letters from the state prison sometimes. The envelopes are stamped with the facility's logo. I do not open a single one of them. I take a thick black marker, write "Return to Sender" across her handwriting, and drop them right back into the mailbox. I do not need to read her excuses. I do not need her toxic, manipulative version of love in my life ever again. Preston is out of the county jail now. I heard through the grapevine that the felony conviction ruined his chances of getting any corporate job. He is currently working as a line cook and busboy at a greasy 24-hour diner on the rough side of town. He lives in a cramped, 2-bedroom apartment with 3 roommates. He has to pay his own rent. He has to pay for his own bus pass. For the very first time in his 27 years of life, he is painfully learning exactly what it costs to survive in the real world. Sometimes, when people at the firm or old acquaintances hear the full story, they ask me if I feel guilty. They say things like, "She is still your mother. Blood is thicker than water. Family is family." They say that because they didn't hear the recording. They didn't sit in a freezing garage and listen to a mother calculate the return on investment of her son's death. I realized through this nightmare that family is not about blood. Blood means absolutely nothing if the people sharing it are holding the knife to your back. Family is about who has your back when the wheels literally fall off. My mother and my brother were the ones loosening the bolts. My real family is Nadine, who fought ruthlessly to protect me. It's Victor, who told me the hard truth when he could have stayed silent and minded his own business. It's Gregory, who chose morality and justice over blind loyalty to his wife. I stood on the balcony of my new penthouse last night, looking out at the glittering city lights of Columbus. I took a deep breath. The air smelled of rain and absolute freedom. I am safe. I am alive. And I am finally driving my own life with my hands firmly, permanently on the wheel. And to anyone listening to this story right now, if you have that deep, sinking gut feeling that something is wrong, if your intuition screams at you to stop, to check the car, to look behind the curtain, listen to it. Trust yourself. It might just save your life. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I have to ask you, have you ever faced something similar with your own family? Have you ever had to cut off toxic relatives to save yourself? Share your story in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next journey.